This is how you solve this thing. Yeah. So we got Babylon B on the screen today. Oh boy. Listen, terrifying sign of extreme white wing behaviors.
Oh dear.
Let's take a listen.
The 4th of July is far behind us. We can stop being patriotic. Do as you're told. We as Americans should hate our country and let socialist policies liberate us like a warm hug, just like the founding fathers would have wanted. But if you're a domestic extremist, then you might celebrate being an American. Ew. Here are 10 ways far-right extremists show their love for America. You need to keep an eye out for them so that you don't do the same. First of all, they say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. The pledge is literal hate speech. And there you are, just saying it like a far-right person. Shame on you. Here's something far-right extremists do all the time. They hang American flags outside their house. Don't do that. The only flag you should have is a pride one. Hey, because you got to do that. And hey, push a commie out of a helicopter. Whoa, hold on. I love pushing people out of helicopters. Who doesn't? But communists? Really? Our socialist brethren? Owning a gun? Whoa. If you exercise your Second Amendment right as an American, then you are an evil fascist. You cried at the end of The Patriot? Cry? I was laughing. What did he even die for? What a moron. Get bitten by a radioactive bald eagle so you can become America Man, where you fly around keeping America a free market capitalist society? Disgusting. You make me sick. Eat a traditional American hot dog and hamburger made out of real meat. Look at me, I'm an American, I'm fat. Nom, nom. Eating a dog is no laughing matter. It's an abomination. Drinking lemonade on the porch swing while watching your 7 kids playing the sprinkler? I don't even know why you do that. The nuclear family is wrong because of radiation. Punch a groomer. Fascists love punching groomers because they think they're better than them. Love is love, man. If you're going to do something like that, at least throw them off a helicopter. That's what I do. And if you believe in the concepts of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, well, then you might be a MAGA Republican. What a joke. Instead, you will own nothing. You will be happy. You won't be like, oh, I need my liberty, son. No. Bad dog, which I don't eat. Well, there you have it, friends. If you do any of these things, then you are a far-right extremist. But you know what? There's no greater gesture of far-right extremist patriotism than buying a MyPillow direct from the source. Pick one up today and enjoy the best night's sleep in the whole wide world. Save up to 80% using promo code BEE1. That's BEE1. Take it from me. I'm a liberal.
Well, I guess that makes me a far-right extremist then.
Oh yeah. I think I fit the description. When he said a flag in front of your house, I'm like, I think I fit the description of a far-right extremist. Yeah. Wow. What perspective. Like who told us to think this way, you know? Like but again, it's only communist thinking that teaches you to hate your own country. That's the only thing. That's the only way I can think about it.
Or
only
trying to use your Second Amendment.
What's up, guys? Alder here with.
Yeah,
that was one that I was like, yeah, well, no, there is that too.
I'm guilty too.
Hi.
Yeah. So, all right, let's take a listen to this.
Harris. Johnny Harris is a very meet Johnny Harris. Johnny Harris is a very popular YouTuber who does great mini documentaries on his channel. I've watched quite a few of them. Recently, he released a video titled "Why the Swiss Love Their Guns More Than Americans." I have a hard time believing that, but okay. However, after watching this video, which is admittedly done really well, this documentary is honestly just a thinly veiled passive-aggressive hit piece against the Second Amendment in America. So now I have to debunk it. Johnny begins the video by visiting a Swiss gun range where they're hosting a long-range shooting competition.
A shooting competition right now at this shooting range surrounded by beautiful Swiss mountains. The sound of these guns, my God, it's like a war zone.
And the first thing I noticed was this exchange he had with the president of the shooting club at that range.
My experience with guns as a kid, I would go out into the forest and like blow up like glass bottles with shotguns.
That's what I think America is all about.
You see, this is a dumbing down and stereotypical view of the American gun culture, which is very misleading because 2 months ago, I did the same type of long-range shooting competition in Finger, Tennessee. These types of shooting competitions exist in America. It just doesn't get any exposure, and unlike the people in Switzerland, our government doesn't give everyone in the country a rifle. We have to buy them with our own money, and the rifles you would use in a competition like this aren't cheap. But I see what you tried to do there.
I was struck by how peaceful and celebratory and wholesome this all was. So much different than the way guns are presented in the USA. So how did we get here?
So you traveled all the way to Switzerland to do what I do every year in Teasdale, Utah and New Mexico, surrounded by beautiful mountains, and it's incredibly peaceful. Except when I or other people do this exact thing in America, we get criticized for it. Where here you're romanticizing it because it's Switzerland. It's the same shit, bro. Now is where he starts to get into the discussion about well-regulated militias. But before we get into that, I have some good news.
Seriously, it's the same exact thing.
AKT1 just
It's
Same exact.
it's the same exact things we do here in America, and it is just completely taking everything out of context.
Absolutely.
Like, dude, have you ever been to an event here in America? Like, have you even tried to go to an event here in America?
Oh yeah.
Like, you go to the event here in America, you're gonna find the same exact experience that you did there.
Yeah, yeah. I worked when I was young at a gun range, and you were supposed to go down in this space and shoot these little orange things in the air, and they would just shoot them. I don't know what you would call
They're
that.
clay pigeons.
Clay pigeons. And it was just, I made money. I was just sitting down there on my phone and just throw those out.
Every time you hear "pull,"
yeah, and they would just shot them, and I'm like, okay,
yeah,
it's the safest place to work for.
Exactly. You know, and it's like
such a common thing. And
that's it. People so don't understand like what the real gun culture is here in America. And then you have people like him, not Colin, but the other guy, who completely misrepresent what it's like. So now he's going over to Switzerland and reinforcing the stereotypes that they believe about gun culture in America.
Yeah. It doesn't even make sense. Not exactly the same thing at all.
No.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going.
Sent me the last holiday batch of their brand new wireless Bluetooth in-ear hearing protection called the Blackout, or as I like to call them, AirPods for shooters. These are my favorite in-ear hearing protection because I can listen to music when I shoot. I can take a phone call. They have auto noise blocking with a 25 dB NRR rating, 6-time hearing enhancement and noise cancellation, and a 10-hour battery life, and a case that holds an additional 3 charges for 30 hours of extra battery life. They sold out on Black Friday, and this is just a small holiday batch. So you might want to pause the video right now, click the link in the description section, and grab you a pair now before they sell out. But for those of you who already have them, back to the video.
By the way, back in like the 1600s, well-regulated militia meant like a well-organized or efficiently run militia, not like regulated in the way that we think of it today. But yeah, the idea was if you arm everyone in your society and you train them, that's actually the key to the best defense and the best preservation of freedom for the people, not just the king.
You know what? He's absolutely correct. But let the anti-gunners in America tell it, regulated means controlled by the government. And I debunked this in a video 9 months ago.
Well, it's also the one right that uses the phrase well-regulated.
John believes well-regulated means controlled or supervised by the government. In the late 18th century, when the Second Amendment was written, Well-regulated did not mean controlled or supervised by the government. It meant well-functioning.
The idea of a well-regulated militia spread across the ocean to a group of British intellectuals who were secretly conspiring to overthrow their own king.
In 1776, they declared independence, using their own well-regulated militia to fight off a tyrannical king and his standing army.
You see, the way he's explaining it gives you the impression that the king was a foreign government. He wasn't. He was their government. So our founding fathers used their personal guns to overthrow their own government that they saw as tyrannical, which is why they wrote the Second Amendment. He glosses over this fact throughout the entire video because this fact contradicts his entire argument in this video, as you'll soon see.
Enshrined in the Constitution itself. In the Constitution, the role of the militia is to protect the government, to protect the country from invasion or insurrection.
Not so fast, Johnny. Once again, he glosses over the whole even your own government part.
Not so fast, Johnny.
This is what I love about Colin. He's on point with everything.
He's a very intelligent guy, man. Well, he's a lawyer, isn't he?
No, I don't know. Maybe
he's a lawyer. Yeah.
I just know that he's really intelligent when it comes to Second Amendment rights.
Yeah, you're not gonna touch that. He's not gonna let you get away with it.
No,
not so fast, Johnny.
I just like here. I would see like the guy from Jurassic Park and the computer screen going, Ain't
gonna happen.
Ain't letting you get away with that. No.
No way, buddy.
From invasion or insurrection.
Not so fast, Johnny. Once again, he glosses over the whole even your own government part. It's an uncomfortable truth for people who think the militia is just about fighting off foreign governments and non-government-led insurrections. It's literally in the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. You'll see later why.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
he
where is he
brings
putting
the
from?
fire. That is the Bill of Rights.
My lord. My lord.
That's in the Bill of Rights.
That is strong. These are some strong words, boy.
Like our founding fathers were not messing around.
No, they were not. They were not. They were way ahead of time, man. They knew what they were doing.
And they knew that if we come to a point in time where it was necessary for the people to stand up to the government, they wanted to ensure for all time that we had the right to and the ability to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like history shows, every time before a government becomes completely tyrannical, they take away the weapons from the people.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do that first. You disarm the people, and then you're able to overcome them.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are bigger in numbers than they are. So you can't take down all of us if we have weapons. So
yeah,
it's hard. I think about 50% of Americans have weapons. About 50, something like that.
I think it's higher than that.
Really?
Yeah.
Good. That's a good thing, because they would think twice before they come out here and trying to abuse their power.
Well, according to Joe Biden, you can't fight the American military. We don't have tanks and air and F-16s.
Yeah,
But you know,
he's dead wrong.
it didn't work for the Taliban.
Yeah, it's a good point. Good point.
Harping on this.
Now you have the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Second Amendment. And then a few years later, the well-regulated militia idea got enshrined in law when one of the first Congresses passed a law that said that every man doesn't just have the right to have a gun, but is required to have a gun and ammo and must train to use it so that the president could call on its armed citizens as its mechanism for defense. This whole legal framework was very clearly like, yes, you can have guns, but only if you are ready to use them to defend our country from invasion or insurrection.
Now, this is where Johnny reaches deep inside his bullshit bag. No, it's not like you can only have guns if you are ready to use them to protect the government. He's speaking as if the central government gives us the privilege to own guns. The people already had guns. Remember, they just used them to fight the Revolutionary War. The Second Amendment, which was ratified in 1791, simply directed the central government not to infringe on the people's right to keep and bear arms. What he's quoting is the Militia Act of 1793, which says, hey, we know we can't take those guns from you, but we can still call on you to help us out in these 3 specific cases. He's being very deceptive by trying to fuse the Militia Act into the Second Amendment. That's not how that works.
The militia system was working for this young nation to ensure its freedoms with an armed citizenry, something Switzerland had been doing for centuries. Guns started out as a symbol of collective security, as collective defense, armed citizens ready to stand up to defend the country. But needless to say, things kind of changed when it came to guns in America. So how we got from that to this is the next part of this video.
What do you mean things kind of changed when it comes to guns in America? It's the same shit. We just don't wear tights anymore and we have better guns. We're still the people and the government still can infringe on the right of the people to keep and bear arms.
necessary just to, protect our country, and this, self-defense thinking is part of our, our people and from Switzerland.
What Switzerland doesn't have that we have in the United States is a Second Amendment, an articulated, unambiguous right to have guns. Instead, guns are articulated mostly as a duty to protect the country. And then, secondly, comes the privilege to use guns, to compete with them, to own guns, etc. For them, the duty came first.
You can literally end the video here.
This is completely opposite to what the founding fathers had intended. It's not the idea that they duty to protect their country. It's like, no, it's been set up for self-defense. Not so much to work alongside the government, is to stop the government from becoming tyrannical.
So, I mean, essentially, it is a way for the people to protect their country.
Of course.
Just not in the way he's thinking of it.
Yeah. It's like protecting the country from a foreign government, from another country invading this country, which is, definitely true.
In part
it is, but it's more than that.
Yeah. It's also to protect it from your own government that's trying to impede and infringe on your rights.
That's right.
As it said in the Bill of Rights.
Correct.
You have a duty to stand up to a tyrannical government.
Absolutely. I get that. I don't see why he's making it sound complicated at all. It's
because he's trying to muddy the waters about the Second Amendment. He doesn't understand what a preamble is to the final part of the Second Amendment.
That's sad.
And so if he muddies the waters, this is why Colin said at the beginning, this is a thinly veiled thing about gun control.
Yeah. He's right. All right. Let's keep going.
He says it himself. They don't have a Second Amendment, so they don't have a right to own guns. They have a duty to protect the country, and them having guns is simply a byproduct of that duty. So gun ownership in Switzerland is essentially a privilege. resulting from a duty to protect the country. Where in the US, the Second Amendment was written to tell the government that the people have a right, not a privilege, but a right to own guns so that they can come together and be an effective force to fight off a tyrannical government, even if it's their own government. So yes, in the US, our inalienable rights come first because this country was founded on the principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you can't protect yourself first, how can you protect the country?
As I visit these gun clubs, it's striking how much these feel like a magnet for community, a gathering place for the community, a collective activity and competition that everyone in the community can enjoy. I'm so used to guns being associated with danger and division and politics and fear, but here it just has such a different feel than what I'm used to. It's been a really enlightening experience visiting all these shooting ranges, and what it's taught me is that guns here in Switzerland are a totally different thing than they are in America. Like, they're a completely different symbol. They have a very different purpose. They have a very different meaning. And that's kind of surprising to me because remember that the United States was founded on a lot of the same paradigms as Switzerland when it came to having a militia and having firearms in society as a form of collective defense. So to understand how these two gun cultures so greatly diverged despite having similar roots, you have to understand what happens after the Constitution, after the Second Amendment.
He's being.
I have the right to protect my family and myself.
He's being very deceptive there.
Yeah, his foundation is already weak. He's laid the wrong foundation. So now I know everything else now is going to be built on the wrong foundation. Everything else might be deceptive. Maybe he doesn't know.
No, he knows. He's just purposely doing this. This is what a lot of people on the left do when they want to try to enforce gun control.
Yeah.
They purposely deceive people to get people to think this way.
It's crazy. But if you don't know, you can easily be deceived because he's doing everything like to the way he's presenting it.
He's making it really convincing.
Yeah, he's making a convincing argument. It's not convincing so much, but for a person who doesn't know anything about the Constitution and all the law, the Second Amendment, they can easily be manipulated by this.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of us who do, like, well, I can see right through the cracks here. It's not that difficult. It's not that complicated.
No.
I think nothing. That's one thing they do. It's like whenever you get to something that is either not truthful, it has to complicate, like you said, muddy the water, make things sound very confusing, but it's not that confusing. It's really not. But all right, let him continue.
What do you think about American gun culture? Like, what's the view? Bonkers. Like the fact that everybody has a gun.
There's no difference. You're just romanticizing it because it's in a different country. One of the most beautiful countries in the world, I might add. Not to mention, it's required by their military. Even Ty Lopez's son said he didn't really want to do it.
I was also very against the military, and I went reluctantly.
Every single day, there are scores of people from different races and backgrounds at gun ranges across America shooting together. There are weekly IDPA competitions, IPSC competitions, long-range shooting competitions, three-gun competitions, skeet shooting competitions, sporting clay competitions, and none of this is required by our government. We do it voluntarily. They're given their guns by their government. We actually go out and buy guns with our own money. We pay to voluntarily train with our guns with our own money. In Switzerland, most of it is compulsory. Man, just say you love Switzerland. Stop acting like the shooting culture there is so much more magical. Just go outside and find people that shoot in America and you'll see the same thing. The only difference is the government controls the people's access to guns in Switzerland, where in America, we have a Second Amendment that literally tells the government they can't do that.
In America, it will make me feel uneasy. I'm used to being in the proximity of guns and a lot of guns. I don't know how you guys do it.
This dude has a whole machine gun that he admitted he didn't really want, casually lying against the wall. I have a wall of guns behind me. Not one of them is a machine gun, but we're bonkers. Okay.
Because the U.S. had a huge standing army, it did away with a lot of the original laws.
That's a good point.
Like, seriously, like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, come on now.
Crazy. The rhetoric is really bad.
It's like so crazy. And not only that, but like he's talking about the community and all this stuff about gun culture. He obviously hasn't spent any time in the American community gun culture.
No.
Because if he had, he would realize that we're a very close-knit community.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Very
know,
strong on safety. They're not crazy at all. Not in the way
exactly.
that you might think. Yeah. Mm.
And we're very supportive of each other. You know, we look after one another. Everything's about, you know, being safe, doing things in a safe manner, you know, not going out and flagging everybody. You know, it's just keeping things in a proper manner. But obviously, he hasn't done his due diligence in doing that.
That's great. It's a shame though. Should not even be doing this documentary. I can't wait till we do the kind of comments underneath the documentary. I'm pretty sure he gets roasted a lot. Like, you're not gonna take the guns from Americans' hands. It's just not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. I have a sermon coming up
Not
next
while
year.
we're still breathing.
I have a video that I'm working on about cyber attacks, and I'm basing it on the movie. Did you hear the movie called "Leave the World Behind"?
No.
Oh man, look it up. Look it up. Obama is behind the movie. So he's in the production himself. So he's even in the script. So Michelle and Barack Obama are going into making movies now. It's on Netflix. Leave the World Behind. It's about cyber attacks. So I got a video coming up about that, and I'm gonna like connect the dots. It's pretty crazy what these people are about to do. It's like when you watch the movie, it's like a warning, just like the movie Contagion. You're like, yo, we better have our weapon, we better have our money out of the bank, and we better have a place outside of the city where you can go, and you better have some food in store, and you need to take your Bible with you, because it's kind of like what these people are about to do. They're about to shut the country down through cyber attacks. They're gonna shut everything down. And it's like, wow. And they're warning you. And even I got videos of WEF, Klaus Schwab, all of these guys are coming together, warning you, saying a cyber attack is coming soon. It's coming soon. So that movie will give you some perspective. And it also shows you like having the Second Amendment is crucial, because during this time, hooligans, thieves will be wanting to rob, open your house to get food. People are desperate. They turn into animals when they are hungry. So it's not going to be funny. It's not going to be funny. And the movie is warning us about that. It will tell, I'm like, if Obama is signing on to this, what does he know? Just saying. Kind of crazy that former president.
Well, I mean, you know, there's somebody running this country, then we all know it's not Joe Biden. So just saying.
Just saying.
Requiring people to join the militia. And now, without a duty to form a militia to protect the country from invasion and insurrection like the Constitution said, they were left with just the second half of this amendment, the right to bear arms, and how it should not be infringed. Guns started to become more of a personal tool, a tool to pursue their American dream, to hunt, to protect their family, to exterminate.
Wow. He really tried to erase part of the Second Amendment to make it fit his narrative. The first clause of the Second Amendment isn't about requiring people to be in the militia. It's expressing the necessity of the people to always be able to keep and bear arms, so that if they needed to come together and form a militia for the 13th freaking time to possibly fight a tyrannical government, including their own, they would be well regulated, i.e. functioning, because they would have arms. The first clause of the Second Amendment depends on the second clause. The fact that the U.S. has a standing army doesn't make the first clause less relevant. It makes it more relevant. Hard to be a tyrannical government if you don't have a standing army to use tyrannically. The U.S. central government does have a standing army, which means if that government ever becomes tyrannical, the people are going to need arms to come together and form a militia to fight back against it. Why is this so hard to understand? Why is he acting like?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's not that hard at all.
Which
He just breaks it down again. Go ahead.
which comes to full circle now what we were talking about last week, where you have all these military-aged illegal immigrants coming across the border, and now they're trying to recruit them into the military.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. What if their loyalty is to their country and they decide to upheave and go against the government? And what is the government just why? What if the government just decide all of a sudden to use them?
Mm-hmm.
You know, look what happened to Israel. If they had weapons, Hamas would not have been able to do what they did.
Nope.
No way, no how. Not to that degree.
No.
It's crazy, man.
So I mean, you turn around, and this is part of the whole replacement theory is they want to replace the entire military with illegal immigrants so that when it comes time to have the military rise up against the people, they're not going to have any qualms about doing so.
That's a scary thought. Somebody might
That's
tell you
why we need the Second Amendment. That's why we need a well-regulated militia functioning and ready to go.
Just in case. And that's keeps the government in check too, because if they know that, it's like, hey, but these people, you can't mess with them. Yeah, think twice. Yep.
Like no one had guns for protection and hunting before the Second Amendment was written. We've always had guns. The Second Amendment merely protected our right to continue owning them if the new government didn't want us to.
Rambo style. It's not like I'm going shooting at the target. You don't go shooting somewhere in the woods or in the forest. Just don't do that. You go to a shooting range and you get part of the community, and then your goal is not just to shoot wherever there is. So your goal is to get better. Yeah. And your goal is not just to shoot around.
I can tell that everything.
Isn't that the same thing we do?
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing we do.
I don't know what the argument is.
Even when we're out in the woods, even when we're out in the woods shooting tin cans or glass bottles, we're doing it to practice our aim. We're doing it to practice our accuracy and get better. We're actually doing it to practice in real world scenarios where we're going to be shooting through trees, because you're not always going to be shooting with clear line of sight.
That's just crazy to me. I don't know why they're making this sound so complicated. It's not. This video is just
that's like the dumbest argument I've ever heard.
Yeah. It's just like, so what's your point? What's your point? This is the same law here. People don't walk around with guns here shooting wherever they want. That doesn't happen here.
It's not like the Wild West.
There's a whole law in place to forbid that. There are places you go, it is forbidden to even shoot weapons.
You can't shoot
within
you 500 yards of a house or a road.
Yeah, you can't even fish in certain areas. Like that's crazy. Like there are so many laws and regulation here that it's even more strict over here than what he advocating and talking about. Like, and again, man, I don't know. This is weird. Like, but I see why Colin Wall needed to kind of address this, because it's like little jabs underneath. It's like out of all the countries in the world, the attack is against the American Second Amendment. Like, what's the point? What's your problem? But, I guess
this is why we need to address stuff like this and point out the hypocrisies and the problems and the flaws in the logic.
Yeah. Johnny boy, you're wrong.
Goal is to get better. Yeah. And your goal is not just to shoot around.
I can tell that everything he knows about gun culture in America is from movies. Just because people are shooting in the woods doesn't mean it's not a gun range. And even if it isn't, there's this thing called private property, where if you live in a certain area, you can just go shoot in the woods. I don't see anything wrong with that. Also, I'm not going to apologize for wanting to shoot purely for fun. It may not be fun for you, but it's fun as hell to us. Recreational shooting is a staple in the US, and it's usually done with other people. So we're also becoming part of a community when we do it.
Guns continued to take on a more personal symbol in the 60s and 70s, when more and more Americans were losing trust in their government. This was also right at the time when crime was skyrocketing in America.
Without this duty for collective defense, guns became more and more a symbol of personal defense from all of this crime, personal liberty, and a symbol of this growing anti-government sentiment. And as a result, the number of guns in America soared.
If the purpose of the Second Amendment is to protect people's right to have guns in order to protect against a tyrannical government, it makes perfect sense that when crime is up and people don't trust their government, they're going to buy guns. That's literally the point of the Second Amendment.
I was gonna say too. It's like the context. It sounds like since people didn't trust their government, they bought more weapon, as if the crimes were rising because they had bought more weapons. Well, there's also more to the story during that time as well. There were a lot of gangs, violence, and also a lot of mob activity going on too. So you can't, you gotta think about the historical context and what was going on during the time. And not every crime that was happening were the result of gun owners. There's a lot of gangsters
and
there was
illegal
the black
guns going around.
illegal guns going around. There were the Black Widows sessions when Florida was out of control with the crime rate and New York was upside down. So the drug epidemic and the gangsters and all of that, Blood and the Crips were already in the scenes.
Now you add MS-13 into the mix.
Yeah, so it's just that the idea that crimes rising are the result of gun owners, that's not even a true argument. Most of the crimes that are committed are done by people who owning guns illegally. It's not legal guns owners that are doing that. That is a small amount. And yeah, we do have some mental health issues. We do have some people who just do things. That's something let's flip to the crack, but that's not really the law in and of itself. That's not how the statistics ought to be read.
Yeah, that's like the exception to the rule.
You say, yeah. It's so vague what he just did here. It's just he left so many things untouched that, and again, I can see this. I'm like, well, you're not answering a whole lot of questions by these statements, Yeah, those stats, you got to read them. You have to redefine how you go through these stats.
He's using vague stats to prove a very specific point.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
The NRA, which, remember, after the Civil War started as a largely non-political group that was meant to just help Americans be more responsible and better marksmen, they got taken over in the 70s.
Pause.
By a group of hardliners who...
Now, number one, keep in mind right now, most gun owners in America don't trust the NRA. The NRA has done more damage for the Second Amendment than any other gun group and gun lobby than out there.
But didn't NRA also, weren't they invented in the hope to make sure Black people own guns, something like that? Am I correct?
I'm not sure about that. I would have to look into that.
Okay.
But I know that the NRA at one time maybe stood for the Second Amendment and was strong in trying to defend it, but over time has become the most detrimental to the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
There are much better groups out there to support, like Gun Owners of America. That's the first one that pops off the top of my head.
Okay.
So, I mean, the NRA has done irreparable harm to the Second Amendment.
Okay.
So his argument here is completely absurd. Like, he's bringing up the NRA. Okay, great. Whatever. The NRA. Nobody in this 2A community cares or likes the NRA anymore. We all despise them for what they have done. So, just say.
All right. Thank you.
Wanted to change the agenda of the NRA, turning it into a political lobbying group that was set on reshaping the way Americans thought about the Second Amendment and making sure that no legislation ever made it through that curtailed gun rights. They began pushing an interpretation of the Second Amendment that was about individual protection, a right to bear arms so that you can protect yourself, and trying to de-emphasize the connection to a well-regulated militia as the purpose for this right to bear arms.
Wait, so a non-political gun group in a country whose Bill of Rights literally says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed becomes political after the government starts creating gun laws that infringe on the people's right to keep and bear arms. And this is somehow a problem? I'm not seeing the issue here. And do we really believe that the founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment to not include the ability to protect yourself? Like, what good is it to protect a country if you can't protect yourself? So you're telling me you're not allowed to use a gun in self-defense in Switzerland? If they all have guns in their homes to protect the country, they use that same gun to protect themselves personally. This is a ridiculous argument.
Defend this freedom. And it totally worked. The Second Amendment became more and more a guarantee that everyone can have guns to protect themselves and their family, having nothing to do with protecting the country. After all, we have the biggest military in the world.
I told you at the beginning of this video that he glosses over or completely ignores that the Second Amendment is also about protecting against our own government becoming tyrannical. He's trying to deceive you into believing it only has to do with foreign governments becoming tyrannical. His entire argument falls apart if he admits this. But his entire argument has already fallen apart because when you really listen to what he's saying, the Swiss only have guns to protect the government because they don't have a traditional standing army. So that's okay for them to have guns. America has a standing army. So the single mother of two living in a bad neighborhood, she can't have a gun for protection because we have a powerful standing army. Disabled vet, you can't have a gun because we have a powerful military. Young woman living alone, you can't have a gun for protection because we have a powerful military. So because we have a strong and powerful standing military, you don't have an individual right to own a gun. This man is literally trying to rewrite the Bill of Rights.
Right to bear arms. Every year, 20,000 murders occur with a gun. Thousands of children and teens.
You can just hear the exhaustion in his voice of how disgusted he is with this guy at this point.
Yeah, because his argument is so flawed and he keeps building on a false foundation.
Yeah.
And he laid that foundation from the beginning. It's the way he interpreted the law and the way he's actually trying to bring a Swiss perspective to the American Constitution, Second Amendment definition of the law. So he's trying to combine the two in a sense.
Now, granted, I'll give him the fact that the Second Amendment was based on the Swiss version of their law of having a regulated militia.
So, okay, now I see the connection now he has with them. Okay.
That's where the connection comes from. Our founding fathers used that version of Swiss to make our Second Amendment.
Yeah, but they touched things up.
But they cleaned it up and they made it more of their own to ensure it as a God-given right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, his logic in the interpretation and logic is flawed.
It's really flawed. Now, let's listen to the emotional side of this thing because he's about to get into the numbers. You know how that people feels about stuff like this.
Every year, 20,000 murders occur with a gun. Thousands of children and teens are killed with a gun. Hundreds of deaths are caused by gun accidents. Hundreds of mass shootings. And of course, the leading cause of gun violence, suicides. Tens of thousands of lives taken with guns.
So the problem is guns.
According to him, yes. It's like you're blaming a tool
for
the bad construction.
Yeah, for what people chooses to do with it. Like,
so pencils make spelling errors?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're trying to do, but it's like when you look at these numbers, like how many of them are legal gun owners who are responsible for this? There's a small margin of that. Most of this are just gang-related violence.
Yeah.
Most of this.
And
suicidal. So now you should be addressing suicide. You should make a video about that. That's what the problem is. This is the idea he should be addressing here. Why is the homicide rate such a problem? Not why the gun is a problem. Why people are doing they're committing so much, they're killing each other in America. Like, why are people killing themselves in America? These are the things you should be talking about. What is the leading factors behind that? And then you would realize, oh, it's not the guns. It's just the mental health, the gang-related lifestyle, where they are from, what they're into, the drug epidemic and all that. You will realize it's much worse than that.
Exactly. And to address Lonely Banter's comment here, Republicans have put up bills to address mental health and get people help with mental health. The problem is every time they do, Democrats put on a bunch of other things and add other things to it that they want to push through Congress. and they're like, no, we don't want that. You got to cut that off. And without that being cut off, it doesn't get passed.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. Wow. Let's keep going.
So
But we can't seem to do much about it, because as long as guns remain an individual right, now deeply woven into American identity, any effort to try to pass reasonable laws to try to limit these countless deaths that we have in our country will continue to fail, especially as the NRA continues to politicize guns, to use them to divide America, to scare America, and to make us feel like we need guns to be safe.
And this is where his argument completely dies. You see, having an individual right to own a gun has nothing to do with the 20,000 homicides, because the vast majority of those homicides are gang and drug-related murders committed by people acquiring their guns illegally. The vast majority of the children and teens who are killed and injured by guns are not children. They are the same teenagers engaged in gang and drug violence in the inner city. I did a whole video about this, debunking it. Unintentional gun deaths can easily be solved with proper education. That if the government wasn't so busy trying to ban guns and actually did things to help educate people about the 400 million guns we have in this country, people would be more educated. And most of those mass shootings are, again, inner city street violence, where they consider any shooting where 3 or more people die a mass shooting. They are not mass shootings in the traditional way that we understand them to be. It is street violence in poverty-stricken inner cities. As for self-deletions, as I've demonstrated many times, we're not even in the top 30 in the world for high self-deletion rates, yet we have the most guns in the world. If there was a one-to-one correlation, we'd be leading the pack. We're not. So the problem isn't the individual right to own a gun. It is a socioeconomic problem disguised as a gun issue. If the vast majority, and I mean the vast majority of the gun violence, is happening in the same Democrat-ran cities, and damn near everyone in the US has a gun, but not the same issues, that tells you the individual right to own a gun isn't the problem.
Especially as the NRA continues to politicize guns, to use them to divide America, to scare America, and to make us feel like we need guns to be safe.
Oh, stop it. This has nothing to do with the NRA. Half the gun community doesn't even like the NRA, and the vast majority of gun owners aren't even members of the NRA. When's the last time you saw an NRA commercial on CNN or MSNBC or the rest of the mainstream media? The days of making the NRA the big boogeyman scapegoat are gone. The NRA is still doing their thing with a bunch of other groups as well. But most of the new gun owners are people living in liberal cities who realized the government can't protect them, so they went and bought a gun. So, like I said at the beginning of this video, this is a 38-minute gun control ad disguised as a documentary about guns in Switzerland. I suspect the reason he went to Switzerland is to try to create a distinction between Switzerland and the US, because we've been using Switzerland as a prime example of how the issue isn't guns. It's socioeconomic. When you have places where people are living in complete economic depravity, you're going to get violence. So it's no surprise that the vast majority of gun violence in this country is coming from those places. So instead of disguising a gun control ad in a documentary, how about doing a documentary on why the vast majority of the inner cities where the gun violence is happening are ran by Democrats who keep telling us gun control is the answer, even
He's going in. He's going in. He's going in. He's about to land the plane. I kind of said something along that line, but he took it another direction, though. I'm like, the documentary will be better off focusing on why they are doing this. They are deleting themselves, why this is happening. I think if you will go into the heart of the matter, you will realize, wait a minute, you will come face to face with the Crips, the MS-13s, the Blood, and you will find out the cartel is behind this, the open border policies, and the Biden administration is allowing illegal guns to be funded in this country. Like, you will find out, wait a minute, it's not the legal gun owners that are the problem. Most of this stuff, a large share of the crime is being done and promulgated by people who not even supposed to own guns. Illegal guns. It's gang-related violence. So I was right when I said what I said. It's just
and not to mention all these quote-unquote mass issues are done by gang violence. Like, you get all these drive-bys and stuff. You get innocent people caught in the crossfire.
Yeah. And when you notice the mass shootings that they highlight most of the time in the media, the enemy of the people is the ones that are like racially motivated, the ones that the either the left could use as a weapon. You know, they call them supremacists, white supremacists, MAGA Republican. Like, they want to make a connection to show that, and to also attack the Second Amendment. is to show that the guns that these people are using, or are the reasons why this is happening. It's like, man,
Yeah,
it's more to the story than that.
They failed to realize that when the
Yeah.
Second Amendment was written,
Mhm.
people had the same guns as the current standing military.
Yeah. In Chicago alone, I think somewhere in the summer, we had about 16 different shootings in one single night. Didn't even make the news. And there were like 3-4 per people death per shootings. It was over 50 something people that got shot.
Yeah.
I was reading about this in their local news, in the media, not even a peep what the thought was made. I'm like, wait a minute, like, don't their lives don't matter? I thought Black Lives Matter. It's like,
Right.
to me, I'm like, what's going on here? But as soon as either a white person goes in a neighborhood predominantly black and they shoot and kill some people there goes your news right there. There goes your news. And I'm like, yeah. So even the way the news highlight certain things that are happening in shootings is also problematic. So his whole foundation, his whole premise is wrong.
The gun violence is happening are ran by Democrats who keep telling us gun control is the answer, even when a lot of these places have strict gun control. Just saying, follow the money, homie, and you'll get your answer. But then you should do a documentary at that point. But I have a sneaking suspicion you'd really piss off some people you can't afford to piss off, and they don't want people hearing that message. Speaking of hearing, don't forget to grab your blackout in-ear hearing protection at shop.mrcoleonnoir.com. I put a link in the description section for you. And don't forget to like, share, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit that bell symbol so you get notified anytime.
Yeah. Oh, that video he's got on the side here. Oh boy. Yeah, I heard about that. A gun owner pulled out and it ended sadly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Final thought on that?
I mean, Collins nailed it. I mean,
Yeah,
he
he did.
100% nailed it right down to the last. I mean, everything he said was 100% accurate.
Great.
And the guy, he didn't know what he was talking about. He hasn't done his homework properly.
Mm-mm.
He hasn't spent any time doing any research in American gun culture.
Mm-mm. There's a
And
lot
it
missing.
shows.
Yeah, there's a lot missing here in the documentary. A lot missing. He's not
Like,
considering a whole lot.
If you're going to do a documentary, you got to go full on and do both sides and show the full picture, not just one-sided.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a biased approach. It's not really coming and addressing the matter for what it really is, because you have to cover all the side of the story. You have to cover all sides, and you're unable to do that when you're biased in your approach. Because if you have an issue with gun violence, you think gun is the problem, and you're trying to put a documentary together, you're already biased. Everything you're gonna say from this point forward will be based on something to support your notion. You're not gonna tell the whole story.
It's like building a house that falls apart and then you blame the hammer.
That's a great video though, very educational, and I love the way he goes about debunking the guy. So